Welcome to Safety Spectrum, your environmental health and safety connection. This program is a presentation of the Michigan Safety Conference. For almost a century, the annual conference has provided credible educational opportunities and valuable support to the safety and health practitioner by offering 120 instructional programs along with exhibits highlighting the latest in safety equipment, instrumentation, and demonstrations. To learn more about the conference, please find us at safetyconference.org. Welcome to Safety Spectrum. I'm your host, Sheila Ide. This program is sponsored by the Michigan Safety Conference, and our topic today is STCKY, Preventing Serious Illnesses and Fatalities. 93 years and counting, the Michigan Safety Conference, an all-volunteer organization, has been providing the latest in EHS training and exhibits that benefit safety and health program professionals. Today, we're talking to its current president. Our guest today is Mark Jones, the EHS Director for Plastipak Packaging. Plastipak has approximately 5,000 employees and 40 global locations and is a global leader in manufacturing and recycling of rigid plastic containers for a diverse array of customers. Plastipak was awarded the distinction of America's Safety Companies for 2023 by EHS Today. Prior to this role, Mark spent 31 years at Ford Motor Company, retiring as the corporate safety manager. Mark is a certified safety professional and a certified industrial hygienist. Mark is also the president of the Michigan Safety Conference for 2024 and an extremely modest man. So thank you for joining me today on Safety Spectrum, Mark.
Thank you, Sheila. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, and always great to talk about a safety message with any audience that I can talk to. So this is great.
And you're such a shy, reserved speaker. This is going to be hard to get the words out of you. Is there anything?
I'm sorry.
Is there anything else you wanted to add about your company or your background?
No, just that we do obviously a large plastic manufacturer as well as recycling. It's a huge part of our sustainability initiative and something we really believe is critically important to the environment. So,
why do safety people never retire?
We just don't. And, I think it's a certain passion that, we have. It's that quest to do better. I really think of all the different professions you can meet, safety people care about people. And I think that caring, almost like you think of medical practitioners and others, just that we have this incredibly rewarding opportunity. I do to, make sure that 5,000 people go home safe to their families every night.
Exactly.
To me, it's an honor to have that opportunity to make sure that, people can enjoy their families. It's wonderful.
It's a vocation. Once you're in it, I don't think you can ever leave.
No, you're right. I'm spot on. I agree with you.
So every MSC president creates their own theme for the conference. What does the conference theme STCKY mean?
Yeah, so STCKY basically stands at stuff that could kill you. And the reason that I was attracted to this is that I was honored to have spent about 7 years of my career partnered with the UAW Ford team, looking at serious injury and fatality prevention, really going after the high-risk programs and, creating programs to address many of, the high-risk tasks like electrical safety, working at heights, and those type of events that if you don't do them right, it's not a simple laceration, right? It's stuff that could cause a life-altering event. So I really thought it was important for this conference. I think it's a bit of a lost art. It's actually interesting since we brought it into our theme. I'm seeing a lot that we were trendsetters, right? But it's the same things that are leading to minor injuries aren't the same things that are leading to unfortunate fatalities. These are sort of unusual events, and it's about learning from work that we're normally successful at. Because the same hazards that exist when these events happen exist today. And it's really about those challenges to get in front and have that interface with workers to understand where those opportunities are and how we can prevent them. So I just thought it was a great theme for the conference and something that I'm, personally passionate about and want to make sure that when Bart Pickelman gets in front of our audience for the opening ceremony one year, he just stands up, he introduces himself, and he sits down. He's not going to have the opportunity to read a list of names, the people that have unfortunately passed away in the
Yeah, that's
workplace.
the opening ceremonies at the safety conference. It's very moving. We have the honor guard with the fire department, and then Bart Pickelman, the director of MIOSHA, gets up and reads the names of those that we lost in a workplace fatality, which is quite sobering. No matter how hard we work, it's really sobering.
And you know, I have to add is obviously the opening ceremony is something I'm passionate about. I've had the opportunity to, you know, to work on it as a part of that team. And I know exactly what's going to happen. I write the script for it. And when that bagpipe starts playing Amazing Grace, man, I got a lump in my throat, you know?
I think you did right now too.
Yeah, yeah.
Can't help it. You know, and it's funny, as no matter how sophisticated we get and how many changes and training that we do, it's simple things like falls, like you say. So many of our fatalities every year are falls. It's just kind of crazy. So
Yeah.
that kind of leads, because you said something about fatalities and minors are not always precursors, but what are some of the precursors of serious injuries and fatalities?
So, you know, in simple terms, a precursor are what are those early warning signs that are out there? You know, what are the things that we should be looking for? And there's a, you know, there's a host of those, but you know, just some of the things that come to mind are, for instance, productivity pressures, whether they're real or not. But do people have this perception that they need to put, you know, production, realizing that, you know, we have to make profits for our companies, but you know, we have to do that, you know, work safely. You know, we want to have workers active in the safety program. If people are, you know, disengaged, do we have pre-task plans, job safety analysis, those type things? One of my favorite concepts to talk about is, you know, normalization of deviation, meaning that if there's a task that's set up and we take a shortcut and we're successful and we don't get injured, unfortunately, we're all creatures of efficiency, and that then becomes the new norm. And then you find another shortcut, and every time we're going away from that established procedure, we're just sort of widening that gap and increasing that risk of hazards. But it's there. It happens, and I've seen it so many times in my career. You know, change management's another one where there's updates to, let's say, wiring changes to equipment, or if equipment's being modified, are we properly capturing that and communicating that? I unfortunately investigated a fatality in my career where they had made some changes and there wasn't good communication to the next shift, and they didn't realize that this material was not properly supported, activated a crane, it tipped over and it killed somebody, right? The fortunate worker didn't know. It was sort of the change management and that communication. So are there things like safe work procedures? Do we train employees? There's a number of really good precursors, and I think if there's anything that's probably most important from all the talks that I'm talking to people about is really to have dialogue within your, whether it be your EHS team, your safety committee, your leadership team, and really going through a list of precursors. I'm always happy to share a list that I was able to get from another company, but there's lots of good ones out on the web. But I think that's, to me, is the first starting point to really address these sticky type incidents or serious injury and fatality prevention, to understand those precursors and what may exist in that individual company culture, because every company's different. And for us, I'll tell you, every plant is different. Sometimes different departments are different, right? There's a lot of different cultures that are out there, and you have to understand and do what fits for you and that work group that you're a part of.
So that means walking the floor, talking to people, looking at what's going on. But like you say, communication is key. And if you don't have people talking to each other, feel safe enough to talk to you, then you have a problem. But what about the old, there's so many first aids for every medical, for every lost time? Is that a
Um,
precursor that you look at, or you're looking at it as negative?
yeah, I don't think there's a correlation. I mean, I think there's other factors that are out there, but following the old Heinrich's pyramid, you don't find it works. I don't find it works. But what I think you can do is, if you are having near misses reported,
Yeah.
that to understand what those are and what the latent issues may be, what are the underlying hazards, and understanding what that is then doing to affect the culture of that corporation, that what deviation you have from potentially work practices. One of the things you hear talked about now is sort of the black line, the blue line. The black line is that established procedure. The blue line is actually how the work is getting done by the workers. We actually have thrown out our traditional incident investigation program within my company. Huge paradigm shift. when we said we're getting rid of the 5 whys. I mean, it was like heresy, right? What are you doing, right?
Love it.
And we've said, go talk to the workers and ask the workers how the work is actually getting done. And it's huge enlightening what
Yep.
we've learned from those dialogues when you ask and try to understand how the work is actually getting done by the workers on the floor. Again, they're the ones closest to the work. As we say, they're the one closest to the sharp end of the stick, right? And
Right.
they know what's happening. And if in fact there are shortcuts or things that are being done, or we've asked them to do a job that's in a hard to reach area or things that they can't get the work done, those are the folks that know. So it's really about talking to workers, much like you said, really engaging them in the process. You know, of all the things that I think I've learned, obviously I think leadership commitment is obviously at the top because everything, it starts at the top. But I think worker engagement really, to me, has sort of become the number two.
And
And
that's kind of
really,
what I heard from some of the younger professionals that I've been talking to, is that it is the engagement of talking with people and the different generations and how you have a different communication style depending on the age or the background of the worker. And it's all about walking around and talking. I'm telling you.
no, it's
I led
critical.
you right into that beautifully, didn't I?
Yeah, nice.
So what should be evaluated before starting a job?
So, you know, traditionally we've talked about, what are the steps to the job? I mean, obviously, you have to understand the scope of work that's being done. But to me, there's sort of three, categories. It's, what are the steps? What are the hazards? What are the controls, right? What are the steps? What are the hazards? What are the controls? And laying that out on your typical, job safety analysis, pre-task analysis, pre-job analysis, whatever initials you want to call it. But I think the fourth one that I've learned is rather interesting to add is, what are the constraints? What are the constraints? So we're telling you, this is what you got to get done. Here's the sequence. Here's the hazards. Here's the controls. But what are the things that may not be quite right? And, we have a classic example of an injury just happened within our company, is that they were removing some bus duct and they had a great pre-task analysis that was done, right? But I got to the last section and there was a nearby building column and they couldn't get the crane in to do what they needed to do. So
Oh,
they had to do some improvising. And unfortunately, the thing shifted and there was, again, fortunately, a minor injury. But it was, again, there was a constraint issue, right? There was something that was different with that last section of bus duct and they couldn't get it down like they had everywhere else. And they had done it safely and successfully, right? So I think there's always things to learn by laying out that job hazard sequence so it's in front of everybody, and then having everybody involved look at it, and everybody needs to participate in that as well, right? It's a team effort. You may have the newest person on the job who may think, hey, I'm new, I'm timid, I don't know. Sometimes that fresh set of eyes is so critically important. I always tell this story, and I hate to tell this story, but I had a new boss at one point in my career who I maybe had not been the most fond of. And we went on a plant tour and he found something that I had missed, right? He said, well, what about this? And I was like, darn it, darn it, darn it. But again, the fresh set of eyes, it really was an eye opener for me. I really appreciate new people coming onto a job. It's critically important. They may see things differently. So we want to have everybody having input to evaluate the risks, as well as then understand what's about to get done on that job, right?
so post-incident, do you go back and look at how could we have done this differently?
Yeah, so there's some very complicated forms, but I think really is, what went well, or what were we successful at? What didn't go well? What are the opportunities? And then what can we learn from this? Right? Again, I've
Exactly.
seen some first of all, I think as an industry, doing post-job briefings, there's a huge gap, right? Because everybody's busy. You get done with one job and you go on to the next, right? I get it, right? Time is money. You got trades tied up. You want to get things done. But especially when you get to tasks that you don't do very often, right? Sort of these non-routine, low frequency, high risk tasks. These things are just laden with high hazards, and there's not necessarily the experience. I mean, you can always say, go ask a knowledgeable person. We always tell people, seek a knowledgeable individual, right? Every training program you'll ever see has that, right? But part of the institutional learning is to capture those lessons learned so that we learn from those and we can learn and improve for the next time we do it. And again, I find many corporations just struggle with that. It's tough. It's tough. It
It
really,
is
really
hard.
is.
Yeah, with productivity being key, we always
Yeah.
say safety's job one, but that's not even realistic. It's all part of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
not one thing held out. I was talking to a line manager for a utility company, and he said, you have a power outage. You have some poles that are down. You have to replace them. He says, you don't just replace every pole the same way. You stop. You have to look at it and be sure what are the hazards around this particular pole? What are we going to run into? Do that every single time. It seems redundant. It seems like a pain, but he said, if you don't, somebody gets killed.
Yeah.
Same idea.
Yeah, I think the last thing I really want to walk or, just to add to that is that importance of, the communication of that, work plan, right? To review those job stats, your discusses, the hazards, the controls, whether it be any, constraints, doing a walkthrough as a team, with all those, are there any changes that need to be considered? But then having some type of huddle. So, I don't think every job requires a documented pre-task analysis, right?
Right.
And the times that I've seen it done, what happens is you create what I call a lot of vanilla, right? You're putting a lot of mundane stuff together that becomes, in my experience, a pencil whipping exercise. But I think there needs to at least be the huddle before you do any job, right? And that's getting all the people together so people are knowing what's getting done, by who and how it's getting done. But I think you have to hit a certain threshold. And for every corporation, that's different. And for every type of industry, that's different. But you hit a certain point of saying, you know what, this thing is of such magnitude and of such energy potential that we need to document this, right?
Mhm.
Whatever percent of the work that is, I don't know, but I think there's a certain threshold that you really have to quantify and say, this one is worth writing down because of such, hazards associated with it and potentially catastrophic issues that if somebody's injured, that, we need to write it, document it, get everybody together, walk everybody through it, and post it on the job, make sure everybody understands it. Including some things on that as, what would stop the job and talk about those up front.
Yeah, stopping the job is a biggie. And often, like you said, when you change shifts, maybe something changed in the work, even though the next crew is picking up the same job, they have to have that communication back and forth. That, oh, we ran into this, or this is set up like, so that communication is key. I mean, you can't get away from it.
You know, two of the most common things with stopping the jobs that you talk about are unexpected results or changing conditions. If you talk about a top two, right?
Mhm.
So, let's say that you start an excavating job and it suddenly rains that day. Something's different. Something suddenly different, right?
Yep.
Or I'm operating a crane and I press the up button and it doesn't go up. You don't keep pressing the up button, right? You got to take a pause. But there's actually a psychological phenomenon called sense making, right? Where we'll try to justify why things are working that way or not working that way. We'll talk our way into it. And it's really having people step back and say, something's not right. Again, when I say stopping the job, it's not that I'm stopping a job, taking a coffee break and leaving for 15 minutes, right? I'm stepping back and pausing and reevaluating the situation, the circumstances I'm in. I know when I've talked to leaders over the time that you say stop the job and they get a bit nervous. I said, that's not what we're talking about. In fact, there's many leading companies that actually track the number of work stoppages and they actually celebrate those, right? That thank you, the workers, for stopping a job that something wasn't quite right. I mean, that's a very advanced safety culture, but I think it's a really a neat thing that, you can do.
What you're saying is recognize things are not the same. Things are not right. Why?
Yeah.
We're back to the W, but it's a why. Why did that happen? And
Oh,
not just
spot
keep
on.
going. So
Absolutely.
what energy sources should be identified and how does one determine the amount of risk?
Yep. So again, there's a number of, recent studies that are out there, but you're seeing this energy wheel pop into a lot of the trade industry journals. And it's, basically saying that if we did nothing more, than to help employees understand the energy sources they're being associated with, be electrical, right? It could be, kinetic, thermal, whatever the type of work that they're doing. If we did nothing more than doing that, again, different studies are out there. I hate to quote anybody, right? But they're saying upwards of 30% of, fatal injuries could be prevented because it's generally some type of uncontrolled energy that then relates to the fatality. Not always, okay? So there's not a one size fits all, but especially in, the sector that are, have high hazardous energies, we just really have opportunities to help those workers identify those energy sources. Obviously, short of that then is the magnitude of that and how am I going to control it, right? But the number one key thing there is to at least understand that there is, energy. One of those ones that I think that, industry struggles with, we have in, the companies that I worked with is things like, gravity, right? Or, stored energy that, things are up in the air. You pull that pin or whatever, something's going to fall down, right? And,
Right.
gravity wins every time. So again, I think just concentrating on trying to understand energy sources, the magnitude of those is a great thing to really educate workers. And there's a lot of great data out there that's really supporting that's a trend for industry and something we should all be thinking about.
And a new energy source that's we're just discovering how dangerous it is the lithium battery.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, we just had a fire recently. Well, and whenever there's a fire with lithium, it goes on and on and on. It's just
In
no.
fact, just a quick sales promotion. There's two really good sessions coming up at the Michigan Safety Conference, and we've taken on a larger venue and pairing up the construction division with the fire safety and emergency management division, bringing in some of the top level experts across the state and country to talk about lithium ion fires. Because the more you learn, the scarier it gets. I'm just going to be blunt. And it seems to be a technology that's advancing quicker than the risk assessment said it should have. But I think there's some real issues out there and real challenges for safety professionals. One of the things that I tell my own ignorance is that when you ride on an airplane now, one of the safety messages is to talk about if you drop your phone to call a flight attendant, right? I thought it was because they didn't want you to inconvenience other passengers and crawl on the floor and look for your phone, etc. It's not that at all. They don't want that phone to get in a seat into some type of mechanism that would cause the phone to fold, break, potentially expose the batteries, create the exothermic reaction, and then realizing that actually airplanes are set up that they have containers and pouches they can put laptops in, phones in, etc. for those type of events. So just the things I've learned within the last year about, lithium ion batteries has given me a whole newfound, respect for,
yeah.
Yeah. There's some real challenges for us as safety professionals.
Yeah, sometimes we go faster than we have the safety technology to deal with it, but
No, spot
we
on.
don't want
No,
to learn by accident. I mean, that's the old fashioned way.
no,
So
you
how
hit
do
it
you
right.
involve the workers?
Right. I mean, yeah. So there's a couple of ways to involve the workers. I mean, as I mentioned, I think you always have to have a huddle, right? Before you're starting work, right? Sort of what's getting done, who's doing it, how are they doing it? Especially we get into high risk work, having that group together. But you have different type of things, right? I mean, different sites maybe have shift startup meetings, shift handoff meetings, daily direction setting meetings. There's all sorts of venues where have opportunities to communicate with workers. We really need to take advantage of those so that everybody understands the work that's getting done and that sort of coordinated effort, especially we're getting into high risk work or some of the, the more, hazardous energies that our workers could be exposed to.
And I think you also need to have that input when you're setting up the job or the job safety analysis or just the job itself. Because so often we've all heard the story about the engineer in their office not walking the warehouse floor and setting up racks that don't work for the people using them. And
No, it's absolutely getting out there. And, one of the things that I've really gotten excited about is what they call this 4D model. And I'm just going to grab something here and take a quick look so I get it right. But they call it the 4Ds of operational learning. And it's really an opportunity to ask some questions of workers. Again, we're trying to understand that blue line, right? The black line is what we think the standard is, right? The way it's supposed to get done. And the blue line is the way it's actually going to get done. But I just love these 4Ds. It's actually asking questions, 4 questions, right? I'll just tell you, and then I'll just quickly give you a quick description, right? So the 4Ds are dumb, difficult, different, or dangerous, right? That's simple. And dumb, what are we asking you to sense? What are we asking you to do that doesn't make sense? Why do we have a procedure that says do it this way? And I have a classic example of this is I had an opportunity with my present employer to go over to a site and work the line. They got a bit busy and they gave us some opportunities to sign me up. Oh, I want to come do it. I am following the procedure to the max. I am following the procedure, right? Yeah. I am black line all the way, right? And I have a worker next to me. He's teaching me the shortcuts. He said, why are you doing that? You could scan, 6 of these in a row. You can work ahead and you can take a couple minute break. But, again, it's interesting that how workers are trying to maximize their, efficiency.
Mhm.
What are we asking people to do that's, difficult? Are there hard to reach tasks? Are there excessive weights to lift? I mean, what are the things that they really, really struggle to do that's difficult for them? Because if it's difficult and they can't do it, they're going to somehow find a way to do it, whether it be a workaround, a shortcut, maybe an unsafe procedure that they're going to do it. Who knows? But again, just asking those questions. What's different, right? If suddenly you're doing things and seeing things aren't quite right or off standard conditions, right? You have an automated process, and suddenly one part of that goes down. Maybe one of the machines goes down, or a robot goes down. At that point, you're doing sort of these off standard tasks. Introduces all new hazards, lots of new hazards. Maybe you're working off an aisleway, right? Something where somebody's exposed to traffic. So what are those different types of situations? And lastly, just dangerous. What are that's the last of the D's. And I guarantee if you talk to any tradesperson, any maintenance person, they're going to talk to you about a job that they don't like to do, that they feel is dangerous. In the classic, I'll use again, my own example. I've been in the fire service for 4 decades, and using a abrasive K-12 partner saw. Those things just scared the daylights out of me. And I would do anything I could to do any other assignment on the fire scene, but I didn't want to use that saw, right? Because I just was intimidated by that. And again, I think you talk to any tradesperson, maintenance, there's certain tasks that they're happy when those are over, right? Those are
Right.
done and behind because they're dangerous, and they're not comfortable doing them. And they're like, oh, I just got to get this one behind me. So
And that happened after an injury accident as well, that sometimes people can't go back and do what they were doing.
oh yeah, yeah.
Messes with their head a little bit where they just don't feel safe doing it no matter what you say or how you do it. They just psychologically cannot perform that task again.
No, the whole
Thinking of
post-traumatic
electrical
stress.
workers, I've had that happen with them.
Sure.
So shifting gears for a sec, provide some examples of start work readiness. Apparently you've had that at both companies, huh?
Yeah, so I mean, I think before you start work, you need some forum to do that, right? And again, there's great things on, the internet that you can download and look up. But again, it's really a sequence that you're having people together to identify, what's the risks. Is this something that we can just talk about and we understand those, or we got to the point that we need to, document those? What are the other, permits or things that are out there that we need to have to complete this work safely? And then, lastly about, stopping the job. Again, the 2 biggies I mentioned were the changing conditions, the unsafe results. But there's a new one that's actually sort of immersed in the system, which I think is really, really important. And that's the concept of starting when ready. Right. So we've always had stop the job. Stop the job is there, and stop the job is always going to be there. Right. But you think to yourself, if I plan this job correctly, the likelihood of me needing to stop the job is probably less likely. So I'm like diving in without thinking this one through. And, when I talk to maintenance and tradespeople that have used a start when ready process, they'll tell you how smooth the job goes, how efficient it is. Make sure we have all the equipment there. We have less downtime. So there's really unintended consequences that aren't safety, that the job goes a whole lot better. So sorry, I had to grab my sheet and it was under another sheet. So
Okay.
okay. So, really the start when ready has 2 sides to it. There's the physical readiness, right? So that's things like we have the right tools and equipment, they're safe. We have all of the right personal protective equipment. We know that people know their roles. So that stuff is all in place. But I will tell you the second side of that has to be the whole mental readiness, right? You have to have your job in the game, especially if you're doing high risk work, right? If I'm feeling rushed, frustrated, fatigued, right? Maybe I have small children at home. I didn't sleep well last night, or I'm feeling some production pressures that I'm being rushed to do something, or something hasn't gone quite right and I'm frustrated. As we get frustrated, we get tunnel vision. We have to self-trigger to walk back of that and just regroup. Really, really critically important. And really need to be cool, calm, and collected before we go into these high-risk situations. If something's not right, whether we need to ask our supervisor, we just mentally do it ourselves, but just step back and get yourself mentally in the game. So I really think this concept of start when ready is, critically important. I think it's really, really good. I think it's something that we can really learn as an industry and some things that we can take forward. And then I think the last thing that I think is really critically important that we've really pushed on is, moving with your eyes first. That, before you start that task, that absolute last line of defense is to look through what you're about to do and, where you're about to do it and where you're about to go. And my classic example is, I travel a fair amount for work. It's how do I get out of the rental car garage, right? Because there's arrows going all different directions and it's, the combination of enter and, do not enter. Before I put my car in gear, I understand what my travel path is going to be. I have to back up here. I have to go there. I have to turn there. You wouldn't cross the street without looking. So why would you jump into a job, put your hand inside equipment, right? We need to learn to move with our eyes first before we move our hands or feet, right? Sort of thinking through that path of travel, where we're about to go. Because, psychology tells us, where the eyes go, the hands and feet want to follow. That's natural. It's natural, but it's just having a discipline to stop, think through that with your eyes first, where we're going, what I'm doing, where I'm putting these, right? Again, the analogy, you wouldn't step into traffic without looking first, right? Using your eyes to understand, survey the hazards. We really need to do the same. So we're doing a fair amount of marketing campaigns within our company about move with your eyes first and some big googly eyes. And because I really think that's sort of a great, strategy, right? I mean, that's the tactic. Right? We need to move with those eyes first, right? And really looking carefully before you stick your hands or feet anywhere, if even, resting your hands on equipment. You never know where something may activate or move. So
Yeah.
really just some sort of simple concepts that are out there, but things that I think we as safety professionals need to take those and have that dialogue with our associates to help educate them and understand. Because as we know, these life-altering events happen in a flash. It's quick, and it's the things that you can't go back on. So if we're, mentally prepared, physically prepared, we can really prevent those sticky type injuries, stuff that could kill you. And that's really the theme for the conference this year. And really what I was so excited to bring forward. We have a guest speaker at the conference this year named Mark Yeston. Mark was the chief ranger for the Grand Canyon National Park. He's an amazing human being. And as a part of his duties, he ran over 500 search and rescue missions, really high risk work within the Grand Canyon. When you see the person dangling out of the helicopter several thousand feet above the Grand Canyon, that was Mark. But he's going to really relate about high risk work and the things that they did to get mentally prepared for that, as well as then how they used sort of what you said early on, Sheila, was that post-incident analysis. And Mark will tell you that after every rescue mission, they got the team back together and asked themselves just a couple simple questions that we'll learn from Mark at the conference. But I think it'll be something like what went well, what didn't go well, and what do we learn from this? Because again, if they didn't do something right, a rescuer killed, potentially a patient or somebody else killed, within a park when you're getting people off precarious situations. So it should be a really good talk, and I'm really looking forward to having Mark at the conference and to
I'm
talk
sure
to
he's going to
us.
get some questions about, well, what if there is no other way to do it?
Yeah.
I was training with the firefighters at City Lansing, and we were doing some supervisor training and responsibility in that. And they were asking things like, well, how do I know when the roof's about to go? And I go, that's a tough question. I said,
Yeah.
you can only rely on your experience and your equipment. It's just one of those unanswerable things, but there's always ways to, in a fire, things happen, as you well know.
Yeah,
And
but
you can't
much
predict
like
it.
you said, that's why there's a team there. There's other people looking out. You have people on the outside. They're looking potentially smoke conditions, things that are different on that fire scene. That's why everything in safety is a team effort. And especially when you get into this hybrid stuff, it's really the team working together to assess that and then communicate so that everybody's understanding what's going on and who's doing it and what are those risks. And again,
Yeah,
and
there are
if something's
risks.
not right, stop
Yeah.
the job, walk away, make sure it's safe before you continue. Absolutely.
It's probably a silly question, but why do you believe this topic is important now?
So, great question. We could have actually started with that, I guess. But, when you look over the last 20 years, the rate of, recordable injuries, within the country as a whole is, really, really improved. And we're really proud of our work as safety professionals and, industry. But the reality is the number of fatalities has really been plateaued for years. We really have not made any tremendous impact on workplace fatalities. The reality is there's still around 5,000, workplace fatalities across the nation every single year. And it goes up and down a bit. In fact, it's actually gone up the past couple of years a bit, right? So we're not going the right direction. We're going the wrong direction. Potentially lots of reasons for that. I mean, I think every employer is experiencing an issue finding new employees. So you could have, experience issues there, right? You have new people doing tasks. Whether there's issues about different generational workforces, I don't know. But, everybody's struggling to find workers. I mean, any company you drive down the street pretty much has, help wanted signs outside, right? So you're putting people on tasks that they aren't familiar with. And or potentially then you have people training them to do tasks who don't have much sort of, time on the job as well. So the institutional knowledge that we've had for years, which I think has been very, very effective and, one of those helpful tools, much like you said about, learning from experience. When you have the new person training the new person, they don't know what they don't know, right?
Right.
So I think it really elevates and unfortunately exacerbates the opportunities for serious injuries within the workplace.
And we need more safety people coming back into it. So a lot of us gray hairs out here, and the conference does have a student section, some active students that are in the safety world. So I'd like to encourage that and encourage young people to come out and talk to us. We'll mentor, for heaven's sake. So you say, start when ready, move with your eyes first. Any final thoughts for me?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. I think we're going to have a fantastic conference. I think we have, great sessions lined up, and I appreciate the opportunity to, spend time with you today to talk about this area that I'm really, very passionate about, sticky, and really hopefully people can take some of these comments and ideas and implement them within their own workforce. And my contact information is always very, very public. Whether it be on LinkedIn or otherwise, if I can share any of this information, I'm always happy to do it. So that, again, my long-term goal is to do the conference one year when Bart Pickleman or his or her replacement is here from years from now, comes up on the stage, we introduce them and they sit back down. But until then, we have work to do as safety professionals.
I would love that. I would love that. And we will all be at the conference, so please look us up and ask questions and things like that. So our mission with the Michigan Safety Conference is to enhance workplace health and safety by sharing EHS best practices across the safety spectrum. I'd like to thank Mark Jones of Plastipak for sharing his expertise on Safety Spectrum podcast. And don't forget, register for the 2024 conference, which takes place at the DeVos Center in Grand Rapids on April 16th and 17th. You'll enjoy 120 classes covering every EHS specialty, over 200 vendors, and networking opportunities with over 2,000 EHS professionals. If you have questions about this podcast, the Michigan Safety Conference, or if you'd like to be a guest or sponsor one of our podcasts, information can be found on our website at mich.safetyconference.org. Thank you for listening to Safety Spectrum. This is Sheila Ide.